All right, this is just a quick little stream. Not really set up to do long-term things on stream, and generally there's a lot of boring points of just working on stuff in front of a camera. But last week I had success in fixing up a turntable, which has inspired me to try to push myself to continue working on my backlog and pile of projects, uh, and at least do a little something each weekend. So I came down here, took a look at the pile of stuff. Now, of course, the TV that's been sitting on this bench for forever is just a daunting task of replacing canned electrolytic capacitors that are going to require cutting heavy metal parts to fit the new cans on there and unsoldering a whole bunch of things that then have to get resoldered correctly without losing track of anything. And I'm not there quite yet. I've got a few Fisher receivers I don't have any real use or purpose for, so I'm not really thinking much about, although the one that's hooked up upstairs, I'm thinking of getting that on the bench here, peek in, take a look at the capacitors that run the motor on there to try to get a little more motor stability out of that one, because I feel like that could run a little more stable than it has been, and it's already on a new belt. Of course, I need to get a new belt on this Magnavox that's over here in front of me. Anyways, what I pulled up is, let me change my camera angle, and we'll take a little poke around. And oh, I'm on my new phone today. I bought a new phone. And here we go, camera. And we're going to go with the back-facing camera. And we'll go ahead and... So over here is something I picked up a while ago at... every so many months they have a antique radio swap meet event up in New Hampshire. And in fact, they just had one, I think, last week. And I decided not to go because I just have so much crap. Do I really need to drive up to New Hampshire and buy more crap to add to the pile of things that I need to get around to? Of course, I still have this little 45 player that I need to fix the resistor that I broke. I ordered replacement resistors, and they're in this basement somewhere, and I just never got back to that. And then I still got to replace the electrolytic capacitors in there, and then figure out how to align and get the weight right on the cartridge on that. But that's just not... So anyways, I was looking at this thing that I picked up at the last swap meet I went to in New Hampshire, which is a Seeburg 1000 music. Now, this is not the microwave model that has the built-in amplifier and speaker. The downside of that is that I don't have a amplifier and speaker built in to use it once it's fixed up. I have to wire it into some other amplification option. The upside to that is that I don't have an amplifier to restore, just a turntable. Now, this case is a little beat up, and I've seen people that restore these that make them look really nice and will like make this have windows in it, because this is something that basically would be in a storage closet in a store someplace, and out of sight. This was not made to look pretty. Anyways, I already took the inside out of it, and here it is. And that lifts up pretty easily with the removal of a few screws. And I think the needles are not in awful shape. I didn't get a good look at the bottom one, but I zoomed in on the top one with the camera. It looks like it's got a nice tip on there. And I mean, they're not mangled, they're not bent, which is good because these replacement styluses for these are unobtainium. I think maybe you might find places that might retip them, but they got to be retipped with the right size tip stylus for the records that play on these things. So I don't know. I might have some good use with the styli that are on here. I forget how much I paid for this, but I know I paid little for it. It was something ridiculously low that I didn't even haggle. Like the thing was ducked under a table of crap that some guy brought to the swap meet to sell, and like it was not up on a table, it was under the table. I recognized it. I walked up. It's like I go right to it and then try to act cool. Like, yeah, yeah. How much for that thing that's down there that's not out in the front that I saw from across the room? Yeah, and I think it was something like $15, 10, 15, 20 at most. And I'm just like, deal, here. And maybe you're not supposed to take the first number, but I feel like such a jackass if I don't take the first number, if the first number is ridiculously reasonable. Because not only is that a reasonable number for one of these things, but even if you do find someone on eBay that's selling one of these for $20, you got to pay at least $100 shipping. So it's like, here, take my money. And I lugged it out of there to my car. So yeah, it's got the bottom platter here, which probably had some type of a foam or rubber on there that has since disintegrated and just left residue of adhesive, which would go down on the bottom of there. And basically this would drop a record up here, play the bottom side of the record from underneath, drop it down there, play the other side, and then drop it down on top of this platter. So you want some kind of felt or something on there so that it drops nicely on there. Now the thing that's missing is the weight that goes on top of it that steadies the records on top. And those, well, there's an option online. Someone is selling a bunch of them on eBay. Basically, he had a few machined for his machines, and he had to have more machined than he needed in order to get the order in. So he's like selling the rest on eBay, but it's a seller in England. So not only do I got to pay like $75 for a piece of round metal, but shipping from England. So I don't know. There might be other options out. Basically, you just need something that's heavy and round and not as big as the records, because this mechanism back here lets it know if there are records down here, because if you push that back there, the auto change will, drop the record. But once the last record comes down, this comes in, the weight is smaller than the records, and then that's what tells it to, well, it's not doing it now because it's going from, oh, there it is. So then that basically triggers it to use that arm to lift the stack of records back up. There are videos that demonstrate these things better. This is just me giving a little update to what I'm going to try to work on here. When I plug it in, it does get power. And being that I don't have an amplifier to deal with on this thing, I think really this is just like working on a idler wheel turntable. You gotta clean up your parts. You gotta clean off the residue of old lubrication and re-lubricate things to get everything spinning nicely. And if your rubber is rotted on your idler wheel, then you need to find a replacement for that. This idler wheel here doesn't look great, but it doesn't look cracked. So I don't know. I'm going to have to figure out how to get that out of there, because at the very least, I need to lubricate that clean old gunk and re-lubricate the post on that, and other spinning parts in here. You're going to need to get the motor off of there and clean that off and re-lubricate that. And that's kind of my starting point, is if I can get the motor going and I could get the idler wheel spinning, and I can get all that clean and lubricated, then you got a steady turning platter. And if you got a steady turning platter, you got a turntable. Now the changer parts, they do engage, they do move. Could they be clean and lubricated? Yeah. If I took this all apart, would I ever get it back together again? No. So I'll probably try to clean and touch up the lubrication of that as much as I can without tearing the whole thing apart. But yeah, so that's probably what I'm going to work on a little bit today for a project, is try to disassemble the motor and idler wheel on this and clean them up and put it together and see if I can get this thing spinning on its own. And then, I guess at that point, if I do get the thing spinning and running, I do need to figure out how to wire this into some kind of amplification to see how well it performs. Yeah, questions or comments, or let me know. I'll keep you posted. Be sure to check out the 5-hit tomorrow, Sunday, 6 to 8 Eastern. I'll probably be talking about this project there, or mention it maybe. And on my show Monday, I'll be returning Monday, as will Brian, and I think Mars will be around too. So you want to tune in on Monday and see how many words Brian lets me get, because Brian will be back from whale watching, so I'm sure he'll have a lot to talk about with the whale watching, or whatever the latest thing that amused him on Twitter is. Yeah. So anyways, I came down here because before I start working on this, I wanted to grab my laptop here so I could take it upstairs and connect it to my USB sound card and start recording in some CD4 records and see how those are. And that's part of why I posted this to Quadcast in addition to the Johnny Gators channel and the Twitch channel, because I got my Signet cartridge working adequately. It doesn't play everything perfectly. I don't know that it ever did. I don't know if there's any such thing as perfection with CD4. But some records I can get to play perfectly through the inner grooves, and I'd like to record a few of those in while I have things working. And then I want to tackle the topic of what modern cartridge options are there for CD4, because buying vintage cartridges is just not a sustainable solution. It's a pain in the ass, not to mention the only realistic way to deal with it is to have things retipped, and having things retipped might even alter the original specs. Yeah, I don't know. But there's a lot of talk about Audio-Technica cartridges. Some people are like, oh my God, they're great. They're so awesome. They're great, even though they're not within specs. And some people are like, well, you buy equipment that's not within the specs. What do you expect? And I have some thoughts there. So stay tuned for that, because I plan on doing I plan on testing 3 different Audio-Technica cartridges and comparing them to the Signet. Not to mention, since I just can't seem to get enough of torturing myself, I have picked up yet another Ortofon moving coil cartridge off of eBay. This one is supposedly the one that was designed for CD4. The seller listed it as being low use and in great shape as is. Typically a cartridge from the 70s with a built-in stylus is in need of a retipping by now, but and the pictures were at a little bit of an angle, and I'm not really sure that the cantilever was straight as an arrow, but I threw a bid in, went for it, and we'll see how it is as is, or if I want to get it retipped, or if it's just the same disaster that the MC20 was. But yeah, stay tuned, and you all have a great weekend.